high-profile case putting the president's executive power to the test. Critics arguing the Trump administration plan would alienate immigrants and lead to an undercount, putting a state's political power in Congress and federal funding at risk.
This is absolutely devastating. Supreme Court just delivered blow that strips Trump's executive power, and I mean actual power taken away. Not political rhetoric, not partisan spin, real constitutional limits imposed by court that spent years expanding presidential authority. Justices who gave Trump nearly everything he wanted suddenly drawing hard lines, blocking Fed firing, questioning tariff authority, rejecting National Guard deployment. Signal after signal that court preparing to rule against Trump on multiple fronts. And Washington is erupting because nobody expected this. Nobody predicted conservative supermajority would turn on president who appointed 3 of them. Pattern shifting before our eyes, and Trump knows what it means. And here's what makes this catastrophic. These aren't minor procedural setbacks. These are fundamental checks on presidential power over economy and independent institutions. Federal Reserve independence versus presidential control. Congressional trade authority versus executive overreach. Separation of powers versus unitary executive theory. All coming to head simultaneously. All threatening to limit Trump's ability to manipulate economy for political purposes. And court's own language during oral arguments reveals justices are skeptical, are questioning Trump's claims, are protecting institutional structures from presidential interference. That's seismic shift. That's power being stripped in real time. That's meltdown starting as Trump realizes even his own appointees won't give him unlimited authority. But real quick, before we get into this, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built John Brown Show to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, please subscribe, because you might think you are but aren't. Your subscription actually matters here. All right, let's get into what actually happened. Supreme Court heard oral arguments January 21st on Trump versus Cook. Lisa Cook is Federal Reserve Board of Governors member. Trump tried firing her claiming mortgage fraud. Cook says allegations are false pretext, that Trump wants her gone because she won't vote to lower interest rates way he demands. Lower courts blocked firing, said Trump must prove legitimate cause under Federal Reserve Act. And Supreme Court during arguments Wednesday sharply questioned Trump's claims. Justices skeptical of unlimited removal power. Multiple justices expressing concern about Fed independence. ABC News reported court appeared likely to deny Trump's request to fire Cook immediately. That's executive power being stripped. That's court protecting independent institution from presidential interference. Share this video with everyone you know because court skepticism was explicit during arguments. Justices challenged Solicitor General's assertion that president has unchecked power to remove Fed officials. Brett Kavanaugh, Trump's own appointee, warned allowing firing would shatter Fed independence, said transforming Federal Reserve into body subservient to presidential will threaten economic stability. Chief Justice Roberts questioned whether single allegation in mortgage paperwork justifies removing governor. That's conservative justices appointed by Republicans protecting institutional independence over loyalty to Trump. That's unprecedented shift. Think about what that means. Federal Reserve makes monetary policy decisions affecting entire economy, interest rates, inflation control, financial stability. Congress designed Fed as independent agency specifically to insulate those decisions from short-term political pressures. If presidents can fire Fed governors who won't lower rates before elections, monetary policy becomes political weapon. Markets lose confidence. Economic stability threatened. And court understands this. Understands that Trump's attempt to fire Cook isn't about fraud. It's about controlling Fed, about demanding interest rate cuts to juice economy, about subordinating independent institution to presidential whims. Now let me walk you through why this strips real executive power. Federal Reserve Act says governors can only be removed for cause, legitimate misconduct, inability to perform duties, not policy disagreements, not political pressure, Trump trying to circumvent that protection with manufactured allegations, and court seeing through it. During arguments, justices emphasized Fed's unique structure, quasi-private entity with distinct historical protections, Different from other agencies Trump successfully fired officials from, court previously let Trump fire NLRB members, MSPB commissioners, FTC officials, but Fed is different, has deeper constitutional protections, longer tradition of independence, and justices signaling they'll enforce those protections. Make sure you're subscribed to John Brown Show, because if court rules Trump cannot fire Cook, that establishes binding precedent. Presidents cannot control monetary policy through removal threats, cannot subordinate Fed to political demands, cannot fire governors over rate decisions. That's permanent limit on executive power, not just for Trump, for all future presidents. And Trump loses main tool for controlling economy. Can't threaten Jerome Powell with firing, can't pressure Fed board to cut rates, can't manipulate monetary policy for electoral advantage. Real power stripped, real consequences. And tariff case threatens even more fundamental power loss. Trump imposed massive Liberation Day tariffs, claimed authority under various trade laws Congress passed, but lower courts found he exceeded delegated authority, said Congress gave presidents limited power to address specific trade problems, not unlimited power to rewrite entire trade policy through unilateral action. Supreme Court scheduled to rule on tariff legality. And reporting from oral arguments in November showed justices appeared skeptical of Trump's claims. Washington Post analysis indicated court questioning breadth of presidential trade authority. Peterson Institute asked whether court just signaled fate of Trump's tariffs. Answer suggested court inclined to strike them down. Think about the implications. If court rules tariffs exceed delegated authority, entire economic strategy collapses. Tariffs Trump imposed on China, Europe, Mexico, Canada, all potentially invalidated. Companies get refunds. Foreign governments win challenges. And Trump loses leverage he's used to pressure allies and adversaries. Can't threaten tariffs without congressional authorization. Can't impose duties unilaterally. Can't use trade policy as political weapon. That's massive power stripping. That's court enforcing congressional control over commerce. That's separation of powers being restored after a year of executive overreach. Share this with everyone because pattern is clear across multiple cases. Court blocked Trump from deploying National Guard to Chicago. December 23rd ruling said, federal law doesn't allow federalizing state troops over governor's objection for immigration enforcement. That's military power stripped. Court rejected Trump's election executive order. Multiple federal judges ruled Constitution gives no authority to president over state election processes. That's electoral power stripped. Courts blocking clean energy grant cancellations based on which states voted for Trump. That's spending power stripped. Every major Trump initiative facing judicial limits. Every claim of unlimited authority getting rejected. Every attempt to exceed constitutional bounds being checked. Notice what legal scholars are saying. Brennan Center tracking shadow docket shows court issued 25 decisions on Trump administration actions since January 2025. Trump won most emergency requests. But pattern shifting. Court now delaying major decisions until spring 2026. Same strategy used against Nixon, Bush, Obama. Wait until president weakens politically, then deliver crushing defeats. And Trump's approval is 42% according to NBC polling. Down from post-election high, perfect timing for court to impose limits without massive political backlash. Strategic, calculated, devastating for Trump. Make sure you hit that subscribe button because Trump's reaction reveals how damaging this is. Posted on Truth Social attacking Fed independence. Called court decisions terrible and unfair. Complained even his own appointees won't give him everything he wants. That's meltdown beginning. That's Trump realizing conservative supermajority won't rubber stamp unlimited power. That justices care about institutional protections and separation of powers more than political loyalty. And he has no strategy for dealing with it. Can't threaten Supreme Court. Can't pack it with more justices. Can't override their rulings. He's trapped watching executive power get stripped case by case. Think about Lisa Cook case specifically. Trump claimed she committed mortgage fraud years ago, provided single reference in paperwork as evidence. Cook's lawyers demolished allegations, showed no fraud occurred, proved Trump manufacturing cause for removal, and court during arguments indicated they see through it. asked pointed questions about whether allegations meet for cause standard, whether single disputed entry constitutes grounds for firing, whether president can remove Fed governor based on unproven claims. Answers clearly no. That's court protecting institutional independence. That's executive power being stripped in real time. And historical context makes this more significant. Courts spent years expanding Trump's authority, granted presidential immunity for official acts, allowed firing of other independent agency heads, blocked lower court rulings protecting agency officials, deferred to executive branch on immigration enforcement, then suddenly shifted, started questioning claims, started protecting institutions, started enforcing limits. Why? Because even conservative justices worried about unchecked executive power, about president controlling every institution, about separation of powers collapsing. They support strong presidency, but not dictatorship. And Trump's Fed power grab crossed line. Share this video with everyone you know because economic implications are enormous. Federal Reserve independence protects economy from political manipulation, prevents boom-bust cycles driven by electoral timing, maintains market confidence in monetary policy. If Trump could fire Fed officials at will, every election cycle brings uncertainty. Will president demand rate cuts to boost economy? Will monetary policy become campaign tool? Markets hate uncertainty. Investors need stable framework. Fed independence provides that. Court protecting it protects economic stability, but strips Trump's power to control economy for political purposes. That's why he's melting down. And tariff power stripping has immediate consequences. Companies already paid over $130 billion in tariff collections. If court rules tariffs exceeded authority, refunds owed. Markets react to uncertainty about which tariffs remain valid. Trade relationships disrupted as countries wait for court decision. And Trump's main negotiating leverage evaporates. Can't threaten new tariffs without clear congressional authorization. Can't use trade policy to pressure allies over Greenland or NATO contributions. Can't manipulate global commerce through unilateral executive action. Real power gone. Real constraints imposed. Bottom line is this. Supreme Court stripping Trump's executive power through multiple coordinated rulings. Lisa Cook case taking away Fed firing authority. Tariff case threatening trade policy control. National Guard case blocking military deployment. Election cases rejecting presidential authority over state processes. Pattern of judicial limits emerging after year of mostly supporting Trump. And timing is strategic. Court waited until approval drops, until midterms approach, until Trump politically weakened. Same pattern used against Nixon, Bush, Obama, then delivering systematic defeats that reshape presidency. Total meltdown erupts as Trump realizes even conservative justices won't give unlimited power, that institutional protections matter more than partisan loyalty, that separation of powers still exists, that there are limits even friendly court won't cross. His Truth Social posts reveal panic, attacking decisions, complaining about unfairness, threatening retaliation. But threats are empty, cannot override Supreme Court, cannot pack it midterm, cannot make rulings disappear. He's trapped watching executive authority get systematically limited. The power stripping is real. Fed independence being protected, tariff authority being constrained, military deployment being blocked, electoral interference being rejected, spending decisions being reviewed, every major Trump power grab facing judicial scrutiny, every claim of unlimited authority getting checked, every attempt to subordinate independent institutions to presidential will being stopped. That's constitutional system functioning. That's checks and balances working. That's court finally drawing lines after year of deference. Washington erupts watching this play out because shift is sudden and comprehensive. Court that gave Trump everything suddenly saying no. Justices who expanded presidential immunity suddenly protecting institutional independence. Conservative supermajority that blocked Biden's agenda suddenly blocking Trump's economic control. Nobody expected this. Nobody predicted court would turn. But historical pattern always same. Wait until president weakens. Then impose limits. Then reshape executive power. And Trump is weak now. Approval falling. Midterms looming. Multiple court defeats coming. Perfect storm for systematic power stripping. And meltdown is just beginning, because these rulings are permanent. Set precedent for all future presidents. Establish Fed independence is protected. Confirm congressional trade authority matters. Prove military cannot be deployed without legal basis. Those limits survive Trump's presidency. Constrain whoever comes next. That's why stakes are so high. Why Trump fighting so hard? Why he's melting down publicly? Because losing these cases doesn't just limit him now. It limits presidency forever. Shrinks executive power permanently, and he knows it. This story continues. Stay tuned. Because court rulings could drop any decision day. Fed case coming soon. Tariff decision pending. Birthright citizenship challenge approaching. Multiple opportunities for court to strip more executive power, to impose more limits, to check more presidential overreach, and Trump has no defense, no strategy, no way to stop it except hope justices change minds, which they won't. Because institutional protections matter, because separation of powers matters, because even conservative court won't let president control everything, power is being stripped, meltdown is erupting, and constitutional limits are being restored whether Trump accepts it or not. Stay tuned.